And magic, I'm back. Okay. Milk. We're using a 2% milk. I've always used a 2% milk for this. Honestly, I don't think it's going to matter much if you use the skim milk or you use the whole milk. Just don't use the half and half or heavy whipping cream. So we're just going to measure out 3 cups of milk. And I know I touched a little bit on yesterday's video about the different types of dumplings. I'm going to do a whole series eventually. I'm not doing it today. These are just bread dumplings. But there are yeast dumplings. There are dumplings that you do for chicken when you have chicken and dumplings. These are sort of a universal dumpling. They're going to be the heaviest of the different types. This has no yeast in it, so we're not doing a yeast dumpling today. We're just doing a basic bread dumpling. But I've got my 3 cups of milk measured, and I'm just going to set that in the microwave, and I'm going to leave it alone until I'm ready to use it. Now, you might say, well, that's a long time to leave milk out. Well, milk has been pasteurized. So it's just going to get to room temperature, and it's actually going to cook when you put it in the boiling water after you mixed it. So milk is fine to leave out for several hours. As a matter of fact, you're going to want to do this once you start to actually make doughs. Like if we do bread, if we do my grandmother's hoska, donuts, you're going to want to leave your milk out for a good portion of the day. Just make sure after you poured it, put your other milk back so that that does not go bad. I'm going to do that in a minute. I also took out my eggs. And I'm going to use, like I said, I am doubling the recipe. So I'm going to use 4 large eggs. And I use large eggs. You can use extra large eggs. I've never done this recipe with smaller eggs. If you use small eggs, if you use small or medium-sized eggs, you're going to increase by 1 egg. So if the recipe, her original recipe, I believe said 1 egg. No, it said 2 eggs is their original recipe. So you're going to do 3 if you only do the basic with the medium egg. If you double it and you're like, well, I don't have large eggs, I only have medium or small. If you're using small, you're going to increase your eggs by 2. If you use medium, you're just going to increase by 1. And if you're using large, you're going to stay true to the recipe. So I'm going to take out 4 large eggs. And hopefully not break them as I'm bringing them out. Okay. All right, I've got my 4 large eggs, and I'm just going to put those on the side. And they are totally safe to stay out for a few hours. Nothing is going to harm them. You're not going to get sick, and I'm going to turn you guys around so you're facing my refrigerator and I'm not having dead air. And eventually we're going to talk organization on how refrigerators should be, but that's another video. I'm not doing that today. I've got my pork loin up here, and since I'm not doing the dumplings right now, I'm not going to confuse you guys by doing this. But you're going to notice when I open my pork loin roast, and let me shut this, that there's not going to be a whole lot of fat on it. Well, I got my pork loin roast at my butcher shop, who happens to know me. I'm a loyal customer of the butcher shop I go to. And this is an independent butcher from a supermarket. As a matter of fact, it is not a supermarket at all. It's actually a true butcher shop. You'll notice when I pull out the pork loin roast that there is very little fat on the roast itself. So what I do is he usually will give me, and you have to ask for it, is he will give you the fat cap. And this is what a fat cap looks like. This was sucked up because I can get multiple pounds usually. And there are 2 in here. And I did that for a reason. Pork loin roasts especially, if they don't have a lot of fat on them, you'll notice that they don't have a lot of flavor, and you have to do a lot of seasoning to the roast. We're basic. We're just going to season the roast with the caraway seed that we used yesterday in yesterday's sweet and sour cabbage video. But what the pork fat is going to do is it's going to get a nice crisp while it's crackling on the roast. And it's going to keep our roast from drying out. It's going to make the roast a very moist roast. And it's going to make a really juicy, delicious roast. So always, if you're going to do a pork loin roast, and this is a bone-in, by the way. This is not a boneless. We'll talk more about that once I actually do pull the roast out. You're going to want pork fat. So that's it for right this second. I'll be back much later. With the video, you notice that my cabbage is still in the refrigerator. You don't need to bring that out until about 20 to 30 minutes before you're ready to serve the meal and heat it. All it needs to do, it's already fully cooked. All you need to do is get it to a boil, let it boil for a couple of minutes to heat all the way through, and serve. So that can stay in the refrigerator for quite a while. If you were watching the video and you're like me, where you do all 3 on the same day, and I've done that many times, that's okay. You can make everything all at once. And I'll actually give you an inkling of how you want to start the cooking time. Like right now it's 1 o'clock. If you're going to shoot for a 6:30 dinner time, right now you can go ahead, chop your onions, chop your cabbage, get those all ready to go. You can put your cabbage in your pot. Now, if you're going to do all 3 segments, if you're going to do the cabbage, the dumplings, and the pork, more so the cabbage and the dumplings, because the pork needs to go in a roasting pan. So have that at the ready. But your dumplings and your cabbage, you're going to need 2 big pots. So make sure you have enough pots to make both your cabbage and your dumplings at the same time. If you're going to do them in the same day, you can definitely start your cabbage ahead of time. You can even start the dumplings ahead of time. And we'll get into the dumplings, but if you're going to do the cabbage and dumplings at the same exact time, start prepping the cabbage first, because that actually will take the longest. The dumplings, you're going to want to have some kind of a mix master or stand mixer. You're not going to want to have a hand mixer. You can also do the dumplings by hand. My great-grandmother did not have the luxury of mixers. They weren't, when she first was married in the early 1900s, stand mixers weren't even invented. So they were old-fashioned and by hand, they used wooden spoons and mixed. I'm not doing that because the fact that I doubled the dumpling recipe. When you start mixing 6 to 8 cups of flour by hand, you're going to have to be very muscular. It is a lot of work to stir that much flour. So I'm going to let the good old machine do most of the work for me. But you'll see what I mean. So stay tuned. It's 1:30. I'll be back in a few hours to get this meal going. Okay, y'all. Welcome back to my kitchen. I'm just now getting stuff ready for our Valentine's Day dinner. I've got all of my pots and pans on the stove, and I'm going to put my mixing bowl down. I got my smaller of my 2 roasting pans, and I got a rack that came with this particular roasting pan just sitting inside. This pot later on will be used for when we heat up our sweet sour cabbage. And this one will be used for the dumplings. It's a little bit early. I don't even have the roast out yet. I still have my milk and my eggs that have been sitting out for almost 2 hours now. I took them out just about 1:15, so a little bit less than 2 hours. What I'm doing is I just washed my glass mixing bowl for my mixer, because we're going to use the KitchenAid for when I mix up my dumplings. I'm going to pause this for a second because you can hear they want to go outside. Okay, and I'm back. Again, I'm just drying out my KitchenAid. Now, because I doubled this recipe, I'm using my 6-quart. If you're not blessed to have a 6-quart mixer and you're using the KitchenAid Classic 5-quart or the Artisan 5-quart KitchenAid mixer, you can double the recipe. However, you're going to need to be very careful, because if you double it, you're going to be putting 8 cups of flour in your machines. And as you get to the 6-cup mark, the Artisan and the Classic stand mixers will start to struggle with that amount of flour. So if you have a 6-quart, this will be easy. If you have a 5-quart, you may actually have to mix by hand. And I need to find... Oh, you're also going to want to use your flat beater. So I'm just getting my mixer. I'm not actually going to start the dumplings yet, but I'm getting everything together. For the dumplings, you're going to need a 1-cup measuring cup. You can use your teaspoons for the salt that you're going to put in with the flour, but it's not necessary. If you're a good eyeballer, you can do it by just looking, because you're not going to put a lot of salt in with your dumplings. But we're going to start to get our ingredients together. I'm going to have a little bit of a snack, so I apologize in advance. I was going to try to do this off camera, but I'm kind of doing this. Ready? And having fresh vegetables in your refrigerator are a great thing to do. You can cut them up. I didn't cut this up. This was a pre-made veggie dip, but they're a great snack to have in your kitchen. And most supermarkets have pre-made French onion dip or veggie dips. You can usually find them in your produce section of your supermarket. And they're great to have. So, I'm going to pause the video for a second. We're going to start cooking.